Meir resigned as Prime Minister of Israel just about 2 years ago, but recently she has been called back into government service, and she is with us this morning. Ms. Meir, good morning.
Good morning.
And Margaret Osmer from our ABC News Department is with us also. Did you
may I correct something?
You certainly may.
I'm not in government service.
Not at all.
No.
We've been led to understand that you are taking some new role
no, it's
in the government.
In the party.
In the party?
That's right.
And there's a difference?
Quite a difference.
Quite a difference. Well, may I ask you this then? Inasmuch as you have been essentially away from government service for a couple of years, you are now in the United States, you have met with President Ford, you have met with Dr. Kissinger. Under whose auspices and to what end have you been meeting with our leaders?
It's just because your president and your secretary are very gracious. And since we have met when I was in office, this is the second time I've been here now when I'm out of office. And your president was kind enough to invite me to come see him. Just talk about certain...
The weather?
No. But he knows, of course, and I know I do not represent government. Right. I'm a citizen of Israel.
But it is significant that you have been called out of retirement to take part in your party and take an active role, and that is what has happened, isn't it?
Yes, well, I haven't resigned from the party.
No, but
nor
you said...
from elected forms in the party. It's true that I was less active in the party for the last year or two. Mm-hmm. And they called me back now to be more active, but not in government.
Well, you met with President Ford and Dr. Kissinger apparently at some length. Did anything grow out of your discussions and meetings of a new nature that might suggest some new move is coming either by Israel or the United States toward making a lasting peace in Israel?
Well, one thing I can say with great satisfaction, there's really at present no differences of opinion or argument or any kind of this kind between the United States government and the Israeli government. When our Prime Minister was here several months ago and met with your president, of course, it may have even been at the initiative of President Ford that as long as our neighbors are not prepared to negotiate peace, maybe we can do second best and negotiate with them that doing away with the status of belligerency.
You mentioned
and they're
that.
both agreed. And, of course, we can't sound out our neighbors. They won't listen to our sounding. So that's naturally taken over by the United States government. It's the president and the secretary. And I must say, to my sorrow, as yet, no echo has come back.
In the meantime, the Syrian troops are moving farther into Lebanon, and that has been a very sensitive area for your government.
Right.
I wonder if you think anything was going to happen on the non-belligerency front before we have something more serious happening on the Syrian-Israeli border.
Well, I hope nothing happens between Israel and Syria, although it's quite natural we have to watch very, very carefully. Mm-hmm. We haven't interfered, we shouldn't interfere, we have no intention of interfering with the very tragic situation that is in Lebanon. And it's a terrible thing to watch.
You say you have...
But as long as the Syrian army doesn't come close enough to our border with Lebanon to be a threat or a menace, we just watch out with great sympathy, I must say, for the people of Lebanon.
It's tragic.
What is close enough to the border? How do you define?
Well, I don't think... Firstly, I don't know what government decides is the red line. And I mean, there's no sense. I really don't know, but even if I did know, honestly, I wouldn't say.
Our Mr. Moynihan, Mr. Scranton, even President Ford have made some suggestions about, or hints, if you will, about the necessity in the future of Israel pulling back from some of the settlements on the West Bank if there is going to be any kind of a peaceful settlement in the Mideast. Has the United States come to you and said do something? Have they suggested you?
Not that I know of.
But there have been a lot of hints.
Not that I know of. Well, look, the United States has been, is the best friend that we have. I say, I hope it doesn't remain the only friend.
Right.
But in the situation we are in, realistically speaking, it's practically the only friend that goes with us all the way. And we appreciate it, and I'm thankful for it, and more than we can put into words. But even in a relationship of this kind, the borders, we will have to defend.
One of your biggest problems at the moment seems to be with the Arabs within Israel, and it seems to be a more volatile situation than we've seen.
No. It really isn't so.
The West Bank disturbances...
Wait a minute. Now, you've annexed the West Bank to Israel. But we haven't done that yet.
Well, for the problem for the Israel government...
The West Bank is something different.
Have you thought about it?
No. The West Bank is, I think, it's already quietened down, and I think it'll be quiet.
But...
Look, with PLO doing what it does, with this highest form for peace in the world, in the United Nations, dealing practically with nothing else except how can we get another resolution against Israel. Mm-hmm. They are encouraged. We've never said that with all the improvement in the life, in every aspect of the life of the West Bankers, that they pray 3, or I think Muslims pray, 5 times a day, that we should remain. We're realists. Their standard of living has risen. It's the highest standard of living in the Arab community anywhere.
And yet the PLO-supported representatives have been elected, apparently, to a number of positions.
And we didn't interfere.
Right. No, I know you didn't.
You think we didn't know who the people are?
Oh, no, I know you did.
But we didn't interfere.
Well, I wonder what the significance of that is.
There were perfect elections.
Mm-hmm.
If you want democracy at its best, there it was. So some of them, not all, some of them are supporters of PLO. We knew it. Some of them are communistically inclined, which means the same thing as PLO.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Meir, those settlements on the West Bank, there seems to be a huge conflict within the Israeli government about the disposition of those settlements, whether Israelis should be settling on the West.
Settlement.
One settlement.
One settlement. Now, look, you must differentiate between the settlements that have come up on the Jordan River,
right,
in the valley,
mm-hmm,
which is practically an unpopulated area. And the entire area may be about 20,000 Arabs.
Don't they?
Between that and the populated area.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the populated area, there's one settlement, not a settlement even. It's a group that, because government didn't want them to settle there, the compromise was, several months ago, that about 28 families go into an army camp. Mm-hmm. And that's where they are. Now, the argument in the country is, should they remain in that area as a settlement, or should they not? It's the only settlement in the populated area of the Western Bank.
You yourself have pointed out how you've acquired additional territory and pointed out that it has been through war. But it nevertheless has been a very controversial point in the sense that your borders have grown and grown and grown in terms of future settlements.
No, they haven't grown. They haven't grown since the wars. But because of the wars, we've acquired territories that we didn't go out to look for it. And we're thinking of our borders. We're thinking of our borders even when we sign a peace settlement.
But what do you mean by our borders, then?
Borders that we can defend. Nothing else. And I think no government till today has taken a stand that the opposition has from the beginning of '67, that the ceasefire line, since we were attacked again, and since we were attacked again in '73, the ceasefire line should be the final borders of Israel. No government has accepted that. No session of parliament has accepted that. And the position of all governments since '67 till today has been, We don't go back to the 67 border, because that's where we were. Mm-hmm. By the way, which people don't remember. They said, go back to the 67 border. Well, that's exactly where we were. Then why was there a war? Now, the position is somewhere between the ceasefire lines and the 67 borders, we're prepared to negotiate for peace without any preconditions on borders that are agreed upon and acceptable to both sides.
Is that as important when there's talk of nuclear arms in the Middle East?
Look, first place, I hope you won't do what your friend did the other day to...
John Scally?
No.
No.
His friend who's on the program with
Mr.
him.
Clark.
Mr. Clark. CIA says you have nuclear.
You categorically denied, did you not?
Absolutely. So don't
Israel
go back.
has no nuclear
Don't
weapons.
go back.
Is that right? No nuclear
Unless
weapons?
they have, since I was in the last interview, maybe they got them since then.
Miss Meir also talked about personal things, talked about her childhood in Milwaukee and her hopes for future generations. And we're going to have the rest of our talk next week. And we hope you'll be able to see it. Now, 48 minutes past the hour.
It's now 49 minutes past the hour. Before he went away, David joined with Margaret Osborne talking with Golda Meir, first about politics, but also about personal things like growing up in America and then leaving for Palestine as a young lady.
Mrs. Meir, let's talk about you. You grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. How long were you there, until what age?
My father was there since 1903. We came, that is my mother and 3 daughters, in 1906, and I left Milwaukee in December, I think, 1920.
So you were there up through your teens.
Right, I went to
school?
Public school, to high school, what was then normal school, which has since become Teachers College of Madison University.
As a young woman, you felt very strongly about going to what was then Palestine.
Right.
And at this point, there seems to be less of an inclination for young people such as yourself to go there from the United States. In fact, there seem to be more young people leaving. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Look, when I went there, we were a group of with children, think about 20-odd. This wasn't exactly American mass immigration to Israel. And there has never been. I'm sorry for it. I think I'm always surprised that young people here, or other places, don't see it as a challenge.
Well,
I went there for selfish reasons. I wasn't going to let them alone build everything and I'd be out of it. I wanted to be part of it. I'm surprised that young people don't see the challenge of it. Something new.
Well, I think they did, didn't they, up until the last 3 or 4 years, because there's been a change. We've seen the statistics about people leaving Israel, and it's a concern to a lot of us.
The largest number of immigrants, we call it Olim, that have come in a year from the United States, I think, was about 8,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it has come up, it has gone down, and it isn't so that more are leaving. Everyone that leaves Israel is painful to us.
How do you see young people today? You went with a fire in your heart and your mind to Palestine as a child or as a youngster. Do you see similar attitudes now among young people, and how do you look at young people today and their attitudes generally about your country? And
now, as far as young people in Israel is concerned,
in Israel,
I want to tell you they're so good that it hurts. I mean it seriously. For instance, when I've been in office, even before that, but after the 73 war, it was a terrible experience. Mm-hmm. And I see these young men who were in the army, those that came back alive. Some of the best friends are gone. I've seen them wounded in the hospitals. Never did I hear a word of complaint. And I always thought to myself, if they'd only say something bad to me, I'd feel better.
It would make it easier for you.
But as I was going towards their bed, invariably they would say, don't worry, everything is fine. And there I saw them in terrible condition. Then now, for instance, at the end of high school, our youngsters are 18 years old, and they're going to the Army. Now, I meet with them. They're bright kids. And I talk to them. They talk to me. I never lecture to them. We have just a discussion.
Yeah,
and it hurts. I admit, it hurts me to see these young boys and girls that I know that in 3 months from now they'll be in the Army. Nobody can promise them. They don't ask for a promise of that kind. Nobody can promise them that they won't have to fight another war.
But you came as a young person. You came from the United States. And there are a lot of young people now, obviously, born Israelis.
Look, I have 2 generations born Israelis.
That's what I was going to ask you about. How you talk to your own children and grandchildren and a difference in mood about being
Look, I don't like
Israeli
to talk
born.
about my grandchildren on television, although naturally they're the brightest and the best.
And the best looking.
But let me talk about grandchildren. I mean, my generation.
What do you want for them?
My generation that has been through Haganah, our children who have gone through Haganah and the Second World War and the trouble that we had, putting it gently, with the British, all that, Palmach and so on. Now it's their children that are going to the Army. And I cannot say that, let's say, the generation of grandchildren are in any way, in spirit, in courage, inferior to their grandparents or even to their parents.
Not inferior, but I wondered if there was a difference between working to start something and build it and working to keep it.
Do you know what these young people are worried about?
What?
There are certain Army units where only people that volunteer are coming. You still have to find a youngster that isn't his ambition to go into one of these units. They are naturally the most dangerous units.
Is that what you want for these generations of grandchildren?
No. But what I want is, as long as we are in danger, that they should be like this.
Do you think anything has changed?
It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts.
It must.
But it's not our doing.
Miss Meir, with your wealth of experience, your background, your communicating with people, you're touching people, you're leading people. In just a few words, what do you want most for your life to say, and what do you want for the world? 2 questions.
The first thing is peace. Peace in the world, in a decent world. Peace that means life for people. Peace that means development for all peoples in the world. War is the most terrible thing. The next terrible thing is poverty and no education. That masses, millions and millions of people in the world are hungry. That children are born, I might almost say, born hungry and born to die of disease because there isn't enough in this great wealth in the entire world to take care of them. I've believed all my life in a better world. I've had many disappointments, I must say, but I still believe in it. And I believe that, I don't know if but I hope that my children, I'm convinced that my grandchildren will see peace in the area and that everything will be dedicated only to building and making that's our society, that kind of society which we've always dreamt of and which we want it to be.
Thank you, Miss Meir, for being with us today. Thank you.
The more you know about